My mother-in-law starved me while I was pregnant. In the dusty village of Ikemora, where the evenings were filled with the sound of crickets and distant drums, lived a young woman named Zainab. Zainab was once the light of her husband's home. She was soft-spoken, kind, carried herself with quiet strength that made people respect her. When she got married to Sadiq, the only son of the feared and respected Mama Rukaya, many envied her. Sadiq loved her deeply. He would often say, "Even if the whole world turns against you, I will stand with you." And for a while, he did. Their home was filled with laughter. Even Mama Rukaya, though naturally strict, tolerated Zainab because her son was happy. But happiness in Ikemora never stayed too long. One evening, Sadiq fell ill. What started as a simple fever quickly turned into something no one could explain. The village healer was called, prayers were made, sacrifices were offered, nothing worked. Within days, Sadiq was gone. The day he was buried, the sky was unusually quiet. No bird sang, no wind blew. Zainab knelt beside his grave, her swollen belly heavy, her tears endless. "My husband, you promised you wouldn't leave me," she cried, her voice breaking into the silence. But death does not answer. From that moment, everything changed. 3 days after the burial, Mama Rukaya called Zainab into the compound. Her face was hard, cold. "You will not sit here and pretend to be a grieving wife," she said sharply. "Since you entered my son's life, peace has left his house." Zainab blinked in confusion. "Mama, I don't understand." "You are the misfortune he married." Mama Rukaya snapped. "My son was strong before you came. Now he is dead, and you stand here pretending to cry?" The words hit harder than any slap. Zainab's lips trembled. "Mama, I loved your son." "Enough," she shouted. "From today, you will earn every grain of food you eat in this house." That was the beginning of Zainab's suffering. Before dawn, each day, while the village still slept, Zainab would be forced out of her mat. "Wake up," Mama Rukaya would hail, banging on her door. The compound will not clean itself. With her heavy belly, she swept the entire yard. She fetched water from the far stream, trip after trip, her feet swollen, her back aching. The path was rough, filled with stones and stones, but no one cared. If she slowed down, Mama Rukaya's voice would rise like thunder. "Are you lazy on bad luck?" Food became a luxury she could no longer afford. Zainab would cook a large pot of food, rice, soup, yam, but when it was time to eat, Mama Rukaya would stare at her with disgust. "You think you deserve to eat after killing my son?" Sometimes she would throw scrap on the ground. "Eat that if you are truly hungry." And Zainab would, because inside her a child was growing, and that child needed her to survive. At night, when pain wrapped around her body like chains, Zainab would sit outside under the old neem tree. She would hold her stomach gently, whispering through tears, "My child, forgive me. I am trying. I am really trying." The moonlight would fall softly on her face, revealing how much she had changed. She was no longer the glowing bride of Ikemora. She was fading, slowly, painfully. But what Zainab did not know was that she was not alone, not completely. In the quiet corners of the compound, when the wind moved without directions, when doors cracked without touch, when shadows lingered longer than they should, Sadiq was there, watching, silent, restless. His spirit had not left. He saw everything. He saw his mother's cruelty. He saw Zainab's suffering, and though he could not speak, could not touch, could not stop it. The air around him carried anger, the kind that does not die. One night, Mama Rukaya woke suddenly. Her heart was racing. She looked around her dark room. "Who is there?" she whispered. Silence. Then a soft sound. Footsteps, slow, heavy, moving across the compound. Her throat went dry. She grabbed her wrapper tightly. "This is not funny," she shouted, but her voice shook. The footsteps stopped. Then came a cold wind, brushing past her like unseen fingers. Mama Rukaya froze. For the first time since her son's death, fear entered her heart. The next morning, Zainab collapsed while carrying a bucket of water. The bucket fell from her head, spilling across the dusty ground. Villagers nearby rushed towards her. "Ah, this is Sadiq's wife. Look at her condition. She is pregnant." Zainab lay there, barely breathing. Her body had reached its limit, and as her eyes slowly closed, a tear slipped down her cheek. Far away in another village, a man sat outside his house, troubled. "I don't feel at peace," he said quietly to his wife. "These feelings, it is about our daughter." His wife's face tightened. "Zainab," he stood up immediately. "We are going to Ekemora today." Back in the compound, as Zainab lay unconscious, the wind rose again. Stronger this time, the trees swayed violently, and for a brief moment, a shadow stood beside her, watching, waiting. The sun had barely risen over Ekemora, but the village was already restless. Whispers moved from one compound to another like mild fire. "Did you hear? Sadiq's wife collapsed yesterday. They say she hasn't been eating, and she is heavily pregnant." Voices overlapped, growing louder, sharper, more judgmental. But inside Mama Rukaya's compound, there was tension. Zainab lay on a thin mat, her body still, her breathing shallow. A local woman had been called to check on her, but even she shook her head in worry. "This woman needs proper care," she said. "Food, rest, peace. If not," she hesitated. "If not what?" Mama Rukaya snapped impatiently. The woman looked at her directly. "You may lose both mother and child." For a brief second, silence filled the air, but Mama Rukaya turned away. "People like her are stronger than they pretend," she muttered. "She will survive." Outside the compound gate, a small crowd had gathered. The villagers were no longer whispering, they were watching, observing, judging. "This is not right," an elderly man said, shaking his head. "No matter what happened, a pregnant woman should not suffer like this." But fear kept most of them from stepping in. Mama Rukaya was not a woman people challenged easily. By midday, dust rose along the narrow path leading into the village. A bicycle speed through, followed by a small motorbike. Two figures approached with urgency written all over them. Zainab's parents had arrived. Her father, Alhaji Bashir, jumped down before the bike fully stopped. His face was tight with worry, his steps fast and heavy. "Where is my daughter?" he demanded. No greetings, no smiles, just anger. Her mother, Hawa, rushed in behind him, her wrapper barely holding as she hurried. The moment she saw Zainab laying weak and lifeless on the mat, she screamed, "My child!" She fell to her knees beside her, lifting Zainab's head gently. "What have they done to you?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. Zainab's eyes fluttered open slightly. "Mama," she whispered, her voice dry and broken. That single word shattered everything. Alhaji Bashir turned slowly towards Mama Rukaya. The air changed. "You will explain this," he said, dangerously calm. Mama Rukaya folded her arms. "Your daughter is lazy and dramatic. She refuses to eat and wants to blame me." A murmur rose from the villagers nearby. "That is a lie." That lie was too bold, too obvious. Alhaji Bashir stepped forward. "My daughter was raised with dignity," he said. "She is not weak. So I will ask you one more time. what happened in this house. Mama Rukaya scoffed. Take her if you want. She has brought nothing but misfortune here. Hawa gasped. Misfortune? After losing her husband? Yes, Mama Rukaya snapped. Since she entered my son's life, everything went wrong. At that moment, a sudden wind swept through the compound. The trees shook violently. Dust rose into the air. Everyone paused. Even the bed seems to go silent. A metal ball near the kitchen suddenly fell, clanging loudly against the ground. Hawa jumped in fear. The villager stepped back. Alhaji Bashir eyes narrowed. This place, he muttered. Something is not right here. Mama Rukaya's face flickered for a second. Just a second, fear. Inside the hut, Zainab breathing grew uneven. Her hands trembled as she held her stomach. My baby, she whispered weakly. Hawa turned back to her quickly. We are taking you home right now. No! Mama Rukaya's voice cut in sharply. Everyone turned. She cannot leave. Alhaji Bashir's eyes darkened. And who will stop me? Mama Rukaya stepped forward. Her voice lower now, more intense. She is carrying my son's child. That child belongs to this house. The tension snapped. Hawa stood up furious. Belong to this house? When you are starving the mother. You don't understand our traditions, Mama Rukaya fired back. And you don't understand humanity, Hawa shouted. Another sudden gust of wind tore through the compound, this time stronger. The door of the hut slammed shut on its own. Bang! Everyone froze. A baby began to cry somewhere in the distance. The air felt heavy, unsettling, and then a voice, faint, almost like an echo carried by the wind. Enough! Alhaji Bashir returned sharply. Who said that? No one answered. But Zainab's eyes widened slightly. She heard it too. That voice, she knew it. Mama Rukaya staggered back a little. Her confidence cracked. This is not normal, one villager whispered. I told you something is wrong here, another replied. The fear that Mama Rukaya had buried began to rise again, stronger this time. Alhaji Bashir didn't wait any longer. He bent down and carefully lifted Zainab into his arm. She is living with me, he said firmly, and if anyone tries to stop me. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. No one moved. Not even Mama Rukaya. For the first time, she was silent. As they carried Zainab out of the compound, the wind followed them, soft, protective, almost guiding. Behind them, Mama Rukaya stood frozen, alone in the middle of her compound, and just for a brief moment, she felt it again, that presence, right behind her, watching. She turned slowly, but there was no one there, only silence and guilt, creeping in like a shadow she could no longer escape. As Zainab was taken away, her weak hand rested on her stomach. Tears slipped quietly from her eyes, because deep down she knew she was not alone. To be continued. Don't forget to subscribe to this wonderful channel to get notified once the next episode drops. Thank you for staying with me on this beautiful channel. Bye. See you in my next episode.